Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Centre for Legal Innovation's Reinvent Legal Business, the Case Studies series. I'm absolutely delighted to be able to be introducing today Peer Legal. They've got an amazing story to tell, and kind of really excited to hear from all of them about that, and you will in just 1 second. Peter, if I may introduce you, Peter Moran, who is the managing principal at Peer Legal. Peter's going to introduce his amazing team and kick us off for this presentation. Really looking forward to it. And thank you very much again for spending the time with us today. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Terry. Thanks very much, and thank you for having us. And thank you so much to the College of Law for not this opportunity, but this whole series. I've listened to several of them, and they're just a fantastic opportunity to get insight into, I think, colleagues really who are doing lots of amazing things in, the boutique law space. It's really great to have the opportunity. So today we've got me, but also some team members who are going to, tell you about the sort of peer legal model and the peer legal approach. So I'll sort of introduce everyone, and I'll do a bit of talking, and then hopefully get them to do a lot more talking later on. But starting with my left, we've got Katerina Shenskia. Is that okay? Had years of practice. Katerina is a managing associate at Peer Legal in our commercial team. We've got Julian Gillard, much easier name. Next door, Julian is also managing associate in our litigation team. And next to Julian, we've got Doug Robertson, who's also a consulting principal in our commercial team as well. So I thought, given the nature of Peer Legal and the way we work as a firm, and as the name implies, we really like to be, a collaboration of peers. I didn't think it would be appropriate just to have one person speaking the entire time about my vision for the firm that I founded. I thought may as well hear from the team and hear of their own experiences, and so hence inviting some team members along today. I will start, giving a little bit of the story of Peer Legal and sort of what is a core sort of purpose underpinning it. Why Peer Legal? My background, I'm a commercial lawyer. I've been practicing for around 20 years or so. I started in a very big firm in my articles, but I moved sort of early on in my career to sort of boutique small firms. So my last firm was sort of about a 40-person firm. The one before that was about 20. And in both those firms, I was partner. And the lessons I learned over those firms, if we just hold there, in setting up Peer Legal, what I particularly found in the last firm was that, that firm had existed for almost 30 years. It had been founded by the original partners who set it up, doing law the way they wanted to do. And they were very successful. They were excellent lawyers. They produced an excellent product, had very happy clients, and they were a very successful, profitable, happy firm for several decades. When I joined the firm, they were still successful, still excellent lawyers. But what I really found is that a lot of the ways of doing law, a lot of the systems and processes had not changed a lot. Yeah, we moved to email, we had some technology, but a lot of the sort of way we did things was very much the same as it had been for several decades. And what I found was that for me, the way I wanted to work and the way I wanted to do law was being limited by the systems. The tail was wagging the dog. And what I found actually even more problematic than that was the way my clients wanted the services delivered was likewise being impeded by the way we were sort of set up to do it. And I found that really problematic because clients' needs were changing. The way I wanted to service those needs was changing, but the systems were getting in the way. So when I set up Peer Legal, I really didn't want the way we set up and the model and the structure to be the thing that dictated terms. If we go to the next point there, Christine, and click, what I really wanted, rather than having the tail wagging the dog, I wanted a boutique law firm model that is fits and is able to adapt to the needs of the client, not vice versa. So absolutely with client at the centre of doing things. The client's needs, the way the client wants things done is what the model needs to be able to enable. And there needs to be flexibility built into that because not all clients' needs are the same. And so you need to be able to adapt to those different needs. So that's the client side of it. But then it was really important to me for both the way I wanted to work, but the team, that the next point there, that I really wanted a boutique law firm model that fits and is able to adapt to the needs of the team, not vice versa. So I wanted us to be able to, and I wanted the team members to be able to choose the way they wanted to work in the model that suits them. So that's why the word peer, I guess, is in the name, that we are peers, that we are collaborators, that we are in many ways equals. We all bring different things to the table. We all have, I guess, unique skills and knowledges, but together we can create great outcomes. And I guess that's the idea of peer, both within our team and also more broadly. So we have a link there to our peer legal website, which we won't click on there. We'll just go to the next slide. But that accords with what we say on our website about why we exist as a firm. So this is a part of our statement. Now I'm going to show you after this, we've got a document that we actually give all our clients. So we really try to actually live, I guess, our values and what we want to do. And we don't sort of talk about it. We actually really try and do it. And we put it out there with clients. So at Peer Legal, we say that we take the rigor of old world law, and that's important. You know, black letter law, the rigor that comes in, I guess, the way that we get trained as lawyers particularly in that traditional sense is really important. But we really want to try and deliver it elegantly, particularly for our style of client. So the next point there. So I guess a key part is we're not driven by the billable hour. And I'll talk a bit about that shortly. But that was one of a key part of the system that I was talking about in the previous firm, where everything was driven around the billable unit, not even just the hour, but the 6 minutes, the unit itself. So much of the way we did things, so much of the way we thought about ourselves, the way we delivered our services, our accounting systems, our practice management systems, our budgets, was all driven around the billable hour. Now, that wasn't great for clients. I think it's well known there's a whole bunch of reasons why clients don't like billable units and being charged according to time. So for us, that was a really key part. And in founding the firm, I really wanted to try and solve some problems in not being built around the billable hour. The next point there, I really want to use technology. You know, I'm a lover of technology. I guess I'm a bit of a connoisseur these days of legal tech. I write a column in the Law Institute Journal every month that focuses on different legal tech products. And I really wanted to try and take some of those products and really incorporate them into the way we do things and really help us work smarter. I didn't want to have technology for technology's sake, but where a technological tool could really help us adapt to things. You know, I really wanted that. And a great example is Zoom. We started using Zoom from the day we founded the firm. And it was actually a key part of the way we did things, both as a team, and we've had team members, we have team members spread across different cities, but also with clients. You know, we were introducing clients to Zoom and doing Zoom meetings years ago. So obviously when we hit COVID and suddenly everyone was Zooming, we already had that in place. We already had clients comfortable with it. It was something that was actually just part of the way we were doing things. So there's a few things we were doing here where we found we were a bit ahead of the curve when COVID hit and lockdown came in. Next dot point there. And key to the notion of being peers, I really didn't want to have quite the hierarchical structure that you have in law firms, that we really are a network of trusted colleagues, that everyone has different skill sets and expertise they bring to the table, and we really try and work collaboratively. We still do have titles. We have titles of being principals, managing associates, senior associates, lawyers, but those titles really, I guess, are a denotion of experience and expertise. And I think that's important. Clients like to know that. They like to know, particularly where you can't necessarily tell from how someone looks or the age of them what their expertise is. It is important to know, well, this person, you know, is roughly at this level with their expertise. That's sort of the advice I can go. The next page we go to there. And I'll go through some of these concepts in more detail when we talk about this document that we've got here, which really describes how we work. So this is a PDF of an actual document that we send to every client. And I know it's very small there. The next slide, I'm actually going to break those points down. I just wanted to show you that, yeah, this is an actual piece of collateral. And we don't hide from this. We put it out there from day one with clients that this is the way we'll work with you. So we'll click through these dot points and I'll talk to each of them sort of briefly. But this is what we say to our clients is critical. So we price based on value, not time. And we really, in doing that, we fix prices wherever possible. Not always, we still do some time billing, but we, wherever possible, try and set our fixed price at the start. And we base it on value. And a key part of that, I've worked closely with the likes of Liz Harris and David Wells and John Chisholm, is really trying to understand what the value of what you do with the clients are. And that requires getting to know the clients, understanding what their needs are, and really seeing that you can deliver to those needs. So value pricing, and I've talked a bit on value pricing, I could do a whole session on it. It's really changed the way we see ourselves and the way we do things in our relationship with the client. So from the outset, we tell you what our fees are, and we tell you if they need to change. And that's not to say that when we set a number at the start of the matter, that's the final number that the client gets billed. But we do explain if that number has to change, why it will change, and what the sort of things will be that will change it. And so we just find that clients are much, much happier that by the time they get to the end of the matter, they have a little sense of, they either know exactly what they're going to pay at the beginning, or if it changes, they know why, and they understand the reasons, and they generally are very happy with that. We also, part of what we do is we also give options. So we'll say to a client, well, you can approach it this way and the price is going to be this if you approach it that way, but we also might give you B or C, and if you really want to do it that different way. The way we communicate is very important too. So we'll work the way the client needs to. If they want to communicate with phone or with email or in person or any combination of that, we will. A lot of our clients don't really want to have to come into the office. They don't really want to meet us in person. Now, there's times when a face-to-face meeting is really important. We certainly will get clients in, especially early on in the relationship. But a lot of the time we will just use a telephone. We might use Zoom a bit. Certainly when we do a lot of page turning through documents, so we'd almost always use Zoom for that, where we actually just share the screen like we are here and we actually collectively go through the document. We're not afraid to use text messages. There's some clients that's their way that they like to work. Now we'll say it doesn't work for lengthy messages, but certainly it is secure, and certainly for things like exchanging bank details and other information, it's way more secure than email. So we're comfortable with communicating with clients with text, and if that's the way the client wants to work. The next point there. So, we drown in emails a bit in all of us, and we know that our clients, they're busy people. They want us to make our lives easier, not more difficult. So we really need to be discerning about when we email them, when we copy them into emails, when we forward to them. A lot of the time, clients just want to know that we're looking after things, that we're safe in their hands. So, I'm quite strict with the policy that you don't just copy clients in every single email that you're doing, particularly when you're communicating with other parties and things, because they just are trusting you to do with that. Where they need to know what's going on in the matter, then you might forward them that email so they can see for their information. But we really do try to be mindful about not burdening clients further with emails. And even as a team, we try and make sure that we really need to copy people into these emails. We're very flexible as to when we contact you. And when I talk about the team side of things, flexibility and the way we work is a massive part of our model. But we adopt that model with clients as well. Our clients will work in different ways themselves. A lot of our clients are the business owners, and they very much get to pick and choose how and when they work, and we'll work to that. Now, we set limits and we make it clear to clients that, outside hours, weekends is not something that's normal. And sometimes it comes with a premium in terms of pricing, and we have things like an urgency premium. But we will be flexible. If it really works for clients to have an evening call, and certainly when you've got overseas clients, you have to work to that, we'll do that. We'll also provide advice the manner that you want it. So the sort of traditional method, the old school method of setting out advice in a 10-page letter, that is, a beautifully crafted document, but which a client won't really ever read, let alone understand, is not the way we necessarily want to do things. There are times when a formal, lengthy letter is necessary, and we will do that, and we've got some excellent drafters in the team who can do that. But most of the time, that's not what the clients want. We'll do a lot more verbal advice. We'll do it via Zoom. When our standard model of working through an agreement with a client is we'll prepare the first draft, we'll email it, we'll give some commentary in that email, but we'll then do a conference call, and we'll actually walk through all the main clauses of the agreement, via Zoom, and explain it and ask the client that they understand it and get their feedback then and there. We find that's a much more efficient and a much more productive way of getting the agreement to the way you need it to be. And clients really enjoy that. Clients really appreciate not getting these lengthy emails and advices, things that they just don't necessarily value. So as I said, we will do a lot of verbal communications. That means we have to be a bit more rigorous, I guess, with our file notes from time to time. It's why we often generally almost work in teams. So when we're doing a conference call with a client, there'll generally be at least two of us, and one person can do the talking and one take notes, but we do a lot of verbal communication. That tends to be the best way. The habit of lawyers just sort of tapping out emails to clients, I don't think clients like that. They'd much rather most of the time you pick up the phone and walk through it. It tends to be more efficient, but it's also, it really means the client has the opportunity, you can see that they understand you and they can really talk to you. Be available and responsive. Now, we don't necessarily do every task within 24 hours, but if a client sends you through an instruction or asks you to do something, what a client wants to know is that you're on it. And so we have a policy that any email that will come through like that with an instruction from the client, we'll straight away go back and say, yep, thank you, we've got the email, we'll get this done for you by X date. Or we'll give you a call to talk us through more details. That's what clients want. They don't necessarily want a turnaround time of 24 hours for everything, although sometimes they do. But what they want to know is that you're on it, and they want to know the time frame that you're working to. Obviously, where you've got an urgent matter, they want that prioritised. And with all our clients, If we have to drop everything, then we will. We do sometimes charge them for that. And sometimes we'll say to clients, look, this is going to carry an extra price because it's urgent. Are you prepared to pay that price for the urgency? And the clients can then make the call on whether it's worth the additional, the additional charges to turn around urgently. But we'll be very responsive. I did a matter for a client that was using a very large firm, and we got sort of a bit of a conflict matter from them. Not from the firm, but the client came to us because the big firm was conflicted. And I remember catching up with the general counsel after all the work. It was a matter that Katarina and I did, and asking the client just about their experience. And the client was like, "You guys are so responsive. You come back to us so quickly." And I was quite surprised that was sort of a unique experience. I think that's something that as smaller firms would perhaps really have an opportunity. Responsiveness is highly valued, particularly with busy clients. We're a small firm. We're very good at the things we do, but we only really try and stick to things that we know we can do. So we work within our expertise, and we also work within the type of client that's right for us. So we're not a budget firm in terms of the way we price. We certainly price competitively compared with a lot of our bigger competitors. But there are clients where we just say, look, we're not right for you. We can send you to so-and-so. You need someone that is going to be charging less than us, or is particularly certain smaller businesses things, but also certain expertise. If there's something that's equivalent of us, we don't do tax work. There's specific areas where we might actually bring in an expert, a barrister, or another sort of specialist consultant, but we really pick the areas that we know. A key part of us being commercial, and I'll try and get the others to talk tomorrow, is that we really try to understand our clients' business and give advice in the context of their business rather than isolation. As one example to that, we work with clients in their commercial situation, and then if and when a dispute arises, then we just put on our dispute hats. Now, we do have specialist commercial lawyers and litigators, but the person with the relationship and who understands the client stays with that matter. And that can be really problematic for clients where a dispute starts and an entirely new team gets in with no history. I think understanding the context of the client is how you're able to give really tailored, really bespoke, and really helpful advice. So we take a lot of effort trying to understand our clients, particularly new ones early on. As I mentioned before, we generally try and work in teams of at least two, generally a senior and junior. And we just find that really works very well for us. It means there's always someone that can be on top of the matter. We've got our flexible approach, so if someone's unavailable today, they're not working, there's always someone else that can fall back on it that's across the matter. We just think, even though we've got very expert lawyers, that second set of eyes and that sanity checking is just a key part of what we do. Everything sort of gets sanity checked, and that's something that I have always done. Even with my partners, I would go and talk to them in my previous firms, and they would do that. That's just a key part of sort of how we work. So it's rare that there's ever a matter where there's just one lawyer working sort of on their own. I think our final point here, being technically correct is absolutely critical, and first and foremost, we all aim to be really very good black letter lawyers and be technically correct and know the law. But we really want to be commercially sensible. There's no point creating a bunch of problems for clients and then saying, there you go, here's the problems. It's, you go and fix them. Clients only want, the problems identified if we also then help them solve them. And obviously, unless the client understands the problems and understands the advice, then there's not much point giving it. So ensuring the client really understands the issues themselves, and they're lay people most of the time, that's part of our job, is to be able to communicate well with them. So these are all the ways that we really aim to work with our clients. Because we put it front and center, and because we really try and live it, we find the clients love it. It really resonates well. It means that once we get a client, they tend to stick. A common model for us is picking up a larger client who's been working with a range of firms, not necessarily a panel of firms, but they might have several firms, and for whatever reason, we end up with a bit of work in one matter or one area. And what we tend to find is the more we work with those clients, the more we pick up a broader range of their work in private others, because I think it's not just about being great black letter lawyers, it's about all these other elements that is the reason clients choose their advisors. So that's how we work with clients. I'll just talk a little bit about, and this is actually then some feedback. This is how the team surveyed the treater of the year. We actually sort of said, what do we think clients value most? So I won't read all the math there, but you can see for yourselves, these are what we think are the things that clients really value about the way we do things. And they hopefully, you'll see, match the things that we put out there as, I guess, our values and our priorities. So that's the client side. So let's then, I guess, look behind the curtain a bit and talk about peer legal from working as a team. And this is not necessarily things that clients see, but this is sort of how we work. We've got a bunch of, we call them peers on our website there, and we've got a range of different people in our team. So we've got core lawyers for whom peer legal is their main gig, where they work and takes up the majority of what they do. But we also have a range of other team members who are, I guess, contractors. I call them pinch hitters, that have particular expertise, who come in and assist in things from time to time. But peer legal is not necessarily the main thing that they do. And I think the concept of a freelance lawyer has really revolutionised, particularly the small law sector. And I imagine many of the people out there that are listening that have their own firms have really found the opportunity to use freelance lawyers as quite sort of revolutionary, because it means you can really pick and choose for the matter that you need and the skill set that you need. Now, critical to us is we don't have set hours or a location. So the lawyers themselves get to pick and choose when and where they want to work. So we don't have a 9-to-5 office. We don't have a 9-to-5, expectation of work. No one sits around just twiddling their fingers waiting for the partner to go home, and then they can go home and show that they went home after the partner. It's purely about people choose, they do the work that they want to do. Now, in part, that comes about by not having a fixed location. We have an office. In fact, we have an office here in Melbourne, but we also have an office that can be used through a co-share space in Sydney, so team members in Sydney, and hopefully shortly in Brisbane. So there's a space that people can come to work if they want to. We have meeting rooms, we have a range of facilities, we've got teleconferencing, we have great, we have the co-share space that we have a fantastic concierge, and they do a good coffee. So we have all the elements that a traditional firm would have in that, but we do it slightly differently through using a co-share space and not requiring the sort of same footprint of everyone having an office and reception and all that sort of infrastructure. So it means that it's just not the pressure on people who have to be in the office. They can pick and choose when they want to come. Now, I've talked about that we really try and work in a minimum of 10 to 2, and that really is a critical part of how we do things. We really try and utilise technology for collaboration. So we set up with a cloud virtual server system, so no on-premises server or anything like that. And the key thing of that remote desktop situation is that so long as you've got your laptop and you've got an internet connection, your office, your desk, your files, your system are with you wherever you go. So we don't have any paper files. We do have a filing cabinet with the odd bit of paper that we have to produce and keep, but it is, for a firm of our size, pretty tiny little filing cabinet, isn't it, in terms of the documents we have. So we really rely on technology, we rely on electronic systems. We've got a practice management system, we use a system like Xero and things like that. Now, the key part here in terms of that ability for people to pick and choose how they want to work is the way way lawyers are remunerated. So lawyers are all paid a percentage of their billings. And that percentage changes a little bit depending on the seniority of the lawyer, but it's pretty much a consistent sort of methodology across the team. We're pretty transparent about it. Everyone sort of pretty much knows what those numbers are. And basically everyone at the end of the month looks at their billings and the remuneration is calculated on that. Now, there's no budgets. We don't set a budget around the minimum number of hours that people have to work, and we're not necessarily tracking those hours, or the minimum amount of billings. The amount of billings that people want to achieve is entirely up to them. People can say yes or no to work when it's offered. And so that means that it's very much, I think Karen has used the sort of language, choose your own adventure. So you, as the lawyer, are in control. Now, obviously, once you take the work on, you've generally got to see it through and do the necessary work required to get the particular matter or task or dispute or whatever through to conclusion. But you're free at any point to say, you can't take that work on as and when it's offered to you. And we do have enough, I think, capacity within the team to share. But we've got a particularly busy period at the moment, and we are trying to sort of juggle around and help one another out with taking sort of different tasks on. We also have a model that everyone in the team, and not just lawyers, but support staff, even other sort of consultants in the team, are all paid for introductions of clients to the firm. So if they bring a client to the firm, they'll actually be being paid an introducer fee as part, so it's effectively a percentage of the billings that client generates goes back, and that, as I said, is across the firm. We also pay like a referral fee to team members for introducing team members. So there's a big focus in the team on not just technical excellence, and the firm that Katarina and Jill and I come out that I mentioned was a technically excellent law firm. That's really what they were known for, and that's the grounding that we've had, and certainly my previous firms were the same. But we also really have to come up with a high degree of practical and commercial advice. So we spoke about, we really don't do lots of long levels of advice, and we really try and look at more at page terms clients by Zoom, that sort of thing. So one more page from me, and then we'll hear from the team and talks through their experiences. So obviously, when we're working a bit disparately remotely, Katarina has not been in Melbourne a good chunk of the last 12 months. She's been in Brisbane and overseas. We've got team members in Sydney and Brisbane, as I mentioned, and we're not even always in the office together. But so there's some structure required to make sure we do actually still gel as a team. We do still sort of work and collaborate. We know sort of what we're working on and what we're at. So we have a fortnightly fridge meeting, which is the fridge, standing around the fridge in the kitchen of the office. It's the equivalent where we have a Zoom meeting and we all just have a catch up, talk about things that we're doing, we share those sort of things. We also have a monthly roundtable where we possibly try and get together. We just had ours yesterday and we had a lunch. Doug presented to the team on a topic. So it's generally also a bit of a CPD event. We often have guests along that also speak on various topics, and that's a real opportunity for us just to sort of get together. And we're pretty rigorous with making sure we all try and attend that. And we do an annual sort of off-site and on-site. We do it here, which we did in February, and we had a 2-day conference together. Again, we had some guests. We had some other people. We flew our team members from Sydney down for it. We did a SWOT, and we just did other reflections on the firm, and that really enabled us to sort of coalesce as a team, work out some shared sort of strategies. It was also very useful for me in figuring out, I guess, as the managing principal, what some of the key things we really need to try to achieve. That Plato, that's the third one that we've done, third or fourth, I think. And it was a really good opportunity to sort of see how people felt about things. We're really sort of settled. And this was a process that we did here where we asked the team members to list things that describe the positive aspects of peer legal. And you'll see the bigger the word, the more number of people who sort of those sorts down. So you can see flexible front and centre there is big, which I think probably everyone in the team put that down as being a really positive aspect. But you'll see high standard of work, communication, innovative, positive. This was a feedback from the team. So it's not just that we're sort of trying to do these things. I think we really are living them. And I think we came away from that event really feeling like we're onto something, that the model's really, really working. There's a lot of contentment. I think the main thing that I took away was it's great. Let's not break it. let's keep it going, and let's not lose the things that we love about it. So that's peer legal. Maybe just to sort of have a little interlude here. I'll have a little video of Katarina. We did this through Legal Yours, and this will just give us a chance to catch a breath. But this is Katarina about 6 months into peer legal, so I think you're two and a bit years into her peer legal experience. This was probably about 6 months in, so this is now 18 months ago. If we click on that, hopefully the video will play. And I guess this is sort of Katarina's take on what it was like being a peer legal, in her initial experience. Now, I think a lot of this hopefully holds true, but it's interesting to hear your reflections sort of 18 months later. And while this is loading up, I guess we're happy to be a bit sort of frank about this discussion and sort of talk about things that we really love about it, but also things that we're obviously being a bit challenged by. Because any innovation, I think sometimes there's things you've got to sort of tweak. So let's see if we can hear Katarina in a very small video.
Hi everyone, welcome to Legal Yours. I'm here again with the lovely Katarina from Peer Legal, and I actually just wanted to ask Katarina some questions around Peer Legal because it is quite a unique structure and quite a unique firm in the way that it operates. So thank you for joining me, Katarina.
No worries.
Now I'm just interested to delve a little bit deeper into how the actual process works working at a network as opposed to, I guess, a traditional firm. So how does that work for you?
Well, it's a very flexible structure, and I think essentially it's based on trust.
Okay.
So, we don't have to check, Peter doesn't have to check that I've done the right thing,
Okay.
because, we are motivated by, we're internally motivated by the structure itself. So the more we work and the more efficiently we work, the more we get paid. So it is like a choose your own adventure that, if I want to earn more, I work more and I learn to become more efficient. And vice versa, if I want to, take a little bit of a break, I can do that. It's perfectly okay to do that. So, we don't have these strict, billable targets that we have to meet and like kill ourselves over. It's very much work as much as you want to work. And I'm very big on riding the waves of my energy levels. So, using my own energy levels efficiently. But sometimes it might mean I'll get up, early in the morning and I just want to work throughout the day at home.
Yeah.
knock over a lot of work. Other days I want to come into the work club where I have a co-working space at Peer Legal, and to have a meeting with Peter, or to meet with clients. But there isn't this requirement to always be chained to your desk and to be at work from 8 till 8 every day. So it's very, very flexible, and it works very well for me.
Fantastic. Absolutely. And you can actually operate as lawyers should operate. So you're focused on your outcomes, you're focused on your quality of work, you're not focused on just punching in billable units or billable hours all the time. And that's what you're valued on. You're actually valued on the output and the client relationships that you build, all those sorts of things. And what I think is very obvious to me is that a peer legal lawyer is a very empowered lawyer. You're not being micromanaged, told what to do, trying to be pushed into a box. You can, wear what you want to wear. It's this wonderful sort of environment that Peter's built and that you're helping to build. So which is just brilliant. Well, thank you so much for that. And if this is resonating with you as a lawyer out there and you'd like to explore more how you could work with Peer Legal, you can head to our website at legalyours.com.au. You can check out Katerina and both Peter Moran there, or you can head to peerlegal.com.au. Thanks so much for watching.
There you go. A little plug for Karen, and great job she does with Legally Yours. Look, that was 18 months ago, and I guess the context there too is at the time you were living in Melbourne and you were coming into the office from time to time and working remotely. What's happened since then is we had COVID and you moved to Brisbane. And you very skillfully avoided lockdown in Melbourne. So you've had the experience of actually being in a different city, and then you went overseas for 3 or 4 months as well. So I guess how has the model stood up to that sort of situation? It's a bit unusual, but and comparing with sort of your comments then 18 months ago.
Well, I think the model stood up very well. I think what happened during COVID is that all these companies were scrambling to make this new world work, but Peer Legal, I felt like nothing had changed. It was business as usual for us, except that I wasn't coming into the office as much for a number of months. But yeah, everything was already in place. It was actually, I had a lot of people who were asking me questions like, how are you still working? How are you in Brisbane? How are you overseas? And I'm like, well, the structure that I've been sort of telling everybody about before COVID is really wonderful. And before COVID, I think there were a lot more, I was going to say raised eyebrows, but I mean, what I mean by that is that it's so unusual to see a law firm be truly innovative that I think before COVID, it was really one of a kind, because I truly think it's probably one of the first that I know of that was doing it this way. I think businesses are now trying to catch up and do something like that because they're realizing how important it is. But there were court systems, there were law firms that would just not hear of employees working from home. They wouldn't trust them to, I was always hearing, but how do you know that they're actually going to do the right thing? If people work from home, they're just going to waste the day. And that's just absolutely not true with Peer Legal. In fact, it's sort of the opposite. I think that we've become unbelievably efficient with how we work, because you work your own hours and you are remunerated by the outcome, not by the number of hours that you put down somewhere. So that perverse incentive of having to put more hours down to get paid more is just not there. And so the model, I feel like I feel almost ashamed to say that COVID, from a working perspective, hasn't affected me at all. It's just continued to be the same wonderful structure that it was before.
Well, I'll come to a moment about, because I think it was great with COVID in terms of how we were prepared for it, and you're right, we really didn't skip a beat. I don't think clients would have noticed anything. I think one thing that really came out of the lockdown in Melbourne for me was the value and importance of still coming together from time to time, and we talk about that a bit. So it was interesting, and it is nice to have you in Melbourne, from time to time as well. And so it's certainly something whilst we're location agnostic, and whilst we do a lot of stuff where we're not together, and including with clients, I have also really learnt the value of coming together from time to time, including with clients. And I think from making those relationships stick, they can really matter. That was something I really learned. Julian, I want to get you talking a little bit because you rejected the traditional model in our previous firm I mentioned. You know, it's a great firm in many ways, but you were not happy in their way of doing it, and there was no ability for you to do it differently, so you left the firm. You left before I left to try and find a different way of practicing and doing law. And I really strongly remember when I then was setting Peer Legal up, you and I got together and I asked you to describe the way you wanted to work, and you asked me to describe the firm I was setting up, and I think we were both like, excellent. We've sort of found each other with the right match. Now that was 2.5 or 3 years ago now, isn't it?
Almost 4 years.
God, you're coming on 4 years. So I guess, how have you found that journey? Do you find that this model has really worked for you? What are the things, I guess, also reflecting on when we started, where we're at now? What do you sort of take on it all?
I think further to what you said before about firm working around and with lawyers and meeting their needs and demands. I'm a pretty needy and demanding lawyer, so my story is essentially like I liked working at the old firm. It's just I thought I could have been happier traveling overseas 3 to 4 months a year. So pre-COVID, that's what I was doing more or less each year, and working remotely, not necessarily from home, but from overseas. I quit in 2016 and was freelancing, and it was about a year in when Peter gave me a call. I think I was in Lagos, Portugal, and was talking about starting up his own firm and how he wanted to work. And it was perfect. It's just a meeting of the minds, really. And so how it's been working for me freelancing, don't really have any complaints. I'd be really nitpicking. It's just, like, for me personally, a very efficient way to be working, insofar as just hours put in and also remuneration, whereas I'm sure for a lot of lawyers at the old firm, you could be quite busy and stressed out where you're really putting in the hours for a couple of weeks, and then there's a downtime where you don't have much on, but you're still sitting in the office, twiddling your thumbs, not doing anything. And so from my own personal perspective, I felt like my time wasn't being efficiently used, whereas now it's very efficiently used, and I've got a lot of real control over the work I'm taking on. And when I work, I more or less, subject to the court's deadlines and hours where they want me to be doing something, I generally work when and how I want to. And so it's been fantastic.
Do you see it as a long-term career? I think the idea of when you first went freelance is, okay, we'll see how this goes. But can you see it now being the way you will practice?
Yeah, I can't imagine going back to a traditional legal job at a law firm. It's just work-life balance. It won't be as good, and to be honest, I'd be surprised if the remuneration would be as good. So, one of the better aspects is bigger teams, more collegiality, but that just doesn't outweigh all the other benefits that I get from freelancing. So, I don't think it's something on the horizon anytime soon.
Thanks, Julian. Doug, you're more newly arrived at Peer Legal. I think coming up on 6 or 7 months.
That's it.
And Doug, you've been at a few firms, including some bigger, far more traditional firms, and been practicing quite some time. So you've seen a lot of that I spoke about with my previous firm over the decades. I guess 2 questions. One, I guess, what were you sort of what attracted you to Peer Legal? What were you looking for in coming to the firm? And then I guess, what's your experience been like in the sort of 6 or 7 months that you've had in with this sort of model? What were your take on it?
Well, I think, Peter, the main thing for me was flexibility in terms of how I was engaged and joined the firm, how the firm works on a daily basis, and how we're more flexible with our clients. And I think that one of the things is in larger, more traditional firms, there is a huge amount of conformity, the requirement to conform. And to take that, put it on the other foot and analyse it, I don't think, even when I was a partner in some of those other firms, no one ever actually asked you, how do you want to work? How do you best work? And we all know that people have different drivers, and things that suit some people don't suit others. But the firms that I was in never really tried to address that, so that they said to people, how do we maximise your enjoyment and your efficiency at work? And I think that's one of the great things about peer legal, is that we can all do our work in a way that best suits us, obviously taking into account what the client wants. But I think that is one of the absolute key strengths, and not having that straitjacket feeling that you do in a lot of larger organisations, where your ability to move and do things slightly differently is very difficult. And just to take one more point on that, say 10 or 15 years ago, if you were in a large firm, even as a partner, you felt it slightly difficult to say, I'm going to spend 2 days at home working. Where in actual fact, if you're drafting a whole lot of documents or reviewing documents, that's often the best place to be, because you're uninterrupted. So I think that, flexibility is the thing, and obviously the people that join are interesting people, slightly different, which is fantastic. And I've enjoyed the age variation too within peer legal.
Can I ask you, and that is a good time to segue to that question about working from home versus working in an office. And I mentioned before that was the thing I really took from lockdown. And there's a lot of business at the moment that is this revelation of, we can work from home, and there's going to be a percentage of staff that are only ever going to work from home, and employees saying, I'm never coming back to an office. What's your experience of that, being forced to be at home all the time versus having some time at home or in the office?
I personally like a mix. I've been brought up, obviously, where for decades you had to go into the office the whole time. So I do enjoy the socialness of an office, and I enjoy the ability on occasion when you're working on a large deal to be able to quickly talk to someone about different issues in the space of half an hour. So I really enjoy that, and I think in part that is a benefit of us getting together. You do perhaps learn more and share more. Having said that, there's also great strength in working from home, as I said, when you need to really focus on things. And with technology now, with iPhones, etc., and Zoom, you're not that isolated if you don't want to be at home as well. So it's a happy mix for me.
What about you, Julian? Because you're a bit the bookend to Doug, in the sense of your preference is to work from home. How do you find in terms of that balance of home versus being in the office?
I think the advantage of being in the office is, from a litigation perspective, is if you have multiple hands on deck and you're working on something, it's so much easier to communicate and just shout out about something. Whereas when you're not in the same room together, it's either an email or a phone call, and you've got to get a hold of the other person if you're calling them. So I'm sure it's the same on the commercial side. If you're working on a deal, being in the same room, the same office, very handy in those circumstances. And I mean, this is not so much the difference between remote and office, but one of the difficult things, and this is just really nitpicking, from working remotely, is just with litigation. There can be a lot of just admin work and little finicky stuff where I'm either don't have the capacity or I'm too expensive to be doing it. And while we've got junior lawyers and junior staff members involved, as freelancers, they may not be available on that particular days. But that's that's a problem. That's a good problem to have.
I think we have a practice manager who's based in Sydney, so and that works for most things pretty well. And she's a fantastic practice manager. Shout out to Natasha in Sydney. And so that a lot of the things that need to happen in the firm can be managed through someone in another city. But we've just had a paralegal start a couple of months ago who comes into the office, and I've really valued, and I think all of us have valued, having someone actually in the office to assist and support with things as well. Also, it helps that she's fantastic with things that she does. So I think it's about finding the right sort of balance. And I think part of the beauty of our model is there is that flexibility for people to pick and choose a bit, with some level of structure. I guess, Kat, what do you feel? So we've got a level of structure. Do you feel like there could be more or less in the way we sort of dictate things you have to do versus the things you get to choose?
Oh, wow. Whether we should, I think it's working really well. I think we should always look at the individual. So I think that to some degree, there's always a bit of a balancing act between rigidity and flexibility. And in fact, you know, all things, getting a bit philosophical, but that, like all things in life, are both the balance between conservatism and liberalism. In fact, you know, anyway, so I think for every person that balance is different. I'm freedom loving. So for me, the idea that I'm free is so important. Even though I might in fact be working 9 till 9 some days, it's the fact that I know that I can really have that freedom that's really important for me. And I feel that very much with peer legal. And I guess my concern is that if it gets bigger, that it might need to be more rigid, because the more people you have, you know, the more structure you need to organize it. So I hope that we can maintain the beauty of the model while attracting, and I think a lot of that is about attracting the right people who are really like-minded, like Julian said, meeting the minds. I think we can continue this, building the structure to be a network rather than a hierarchy. And perhaps there's a point at which it gets so big that it simply can't work as a network anymore and it must turn into a hierarchy of some sort, maybe. I think that's a social engineering question that I don't have the answer to. But yeah, I think what the beauty of it is that it's small enough to be flexible, but I think it can still grow significantly as long as we've got the right people that are on board with the idea.
Thanks, Kat. Yeah, I went to a presentation earlier this week on culture and what we want as our ideal cultures, and the presenter asked everyone in the room, tell me what you want as your perfect culture. And people threw out these terms. There were people who, in the same sentence, were saying, well, I want somewhere that's really flexible and really secure. Like, so those things are actually counterpoints. So you can't, you've got to find a compromise, because you can't have complete security and then have complete flexibility. So I think that's what the beauty of what we're trying to do is you find that sort of balance. And there's the organisation has that ability to have the balance, but the individuals can also find their own, as we're sort of talking about. I think we've got about 10 minutes left, and Terry, we might let you, I guess, guide some discussion if you want, or take us through some questions if you've got some thoughts on this, having heard this and being the person there in Brisbane. If you've got any questions for myself or any of the team members on anything.
I do, but also for the folks that are on the session, do just want to remind you to again throw those questions into the Q&A at the end of your screen if you would like to. But yeah, I mean, I've got, I guess, really a question for all of you, and just kind of looking at some of the bigger picture takeaways from the work that you've been doing. And I guess my first one is, you know, as I was listening to all of you speak, it was very clear that you've got what I would call a client first and an employee first culture, which is kind of focused very much on, you know, collaboration and designing the service with the client in mind, as well as kind of, you know, weaving in tech into all of that as well. So the question I was wondering is, to what extent, in terms of the work that you do and where you've come from, do you see the change in client expectations now moving more towards the model that you offer versus, I guess, what we would have called the traditional law firm? Because sometimes the pushback from more traditional firms is we're not seeing the client demand. So I'm just curious to know, are you seeing the client demand? Are you creating the market and the clients are responding, or are the clients additionally now also demanding that?
Yeah, I think that's, I'll answer that one. Others have got thoughts, but that's a little bit chicken or the egg, Terry. If you're providing it in a certain way, you're never going to tell the client that there's another way of doing it. And I think that's, you know, I said before that part of the way we're picking up work is we get one opportunity with a larger client that's using other firms. And once they've had that experience of that discrete thing, they're like, oh, well, do you do this or do you do that? Because this experience is fantastic. And we end up taking a good, you know, if not all of the work from those other firms, because the experience and the way we do it is so much what they're looking for. I've had conversations with in-house counsel where I've described the way we do things, and those general counsel go, well, that's how we do it. That's how we want it. That's, they were sort of like this. That's right. That's, so I wonder with some of those conversations whether there's a little bit of confirmation bias going on, because certainly we're having great growth. We've just had probably the busiest 5 months in the history of the firm. We're probably about to have the busiest month we've had in the history of the firm. So in terms of clients, where the run's on the board for us on that. The clients are coming, they stay with us, they're happy, they give us more and more work. In some of the more innovative things, use value pricing as an example, that is a bit more challenging. It's certainly, and you've probably done lots of presentations, Terry, on this where you've heard about that, because there are definitely certain clients that don't want to, they don't want to move away from the hourly rate. Now, I think it's a similar story though. Once you walk them through the benefits to them, and I'll use an example of litigation. We've got a large commercial client that has used a bunch of firms. So a good example where we picked up pretty much most of their commercial work, but they were using another firm for their litigation. But they were complaining about it. They were having the usual experience of getting an estimate at the start and paying 3 times the fee by the end. So they were complaining, and I said, well, give us a go on a smaller matter. And so we did a matter where we did the fixed pricing and the value pricing, and we were actually taking instructions from the CFO, who said, this is just such a better way to do it. I know exactly what it's costing me. I can see why I'm spending this. I can make, actuarial decisions as we go on the spend of it. So the client was converted, just through having experienced the clients. So look, it is horses for courses. I attended a conference last year where I heard an in-house counsel from a very, very big firm describe what they want from a very, very big company, describe what they want from their firm, and they were describing a top tier. And the way they did it was exactly how they wanted it. So absolutely, I think there'll be a place for that. But I think in our space, with the type of clients we have, we are absolutely delivering it the way they want it.
Yeah.
And increasingly, as the businesses learn, they will want it as well.
And I guess
what do you, Doug? What's your
there as well?
I think
choice now, right? People have a choice. So yeah, sorry.
I think a lot of clients find going into more traditional and larger firms quite daunting too. And I think a peer legal model, where we're not too big and there's ready access to all the lawyers via technology or via coming in, or is quite a refreshing change for a lot of them. I think that's a definite plus for a structure like ours.
You guys have any thoughts?
Litigation's generally a bit tricky because you generally once-off clients, but I'm sure from the perspective of, again, we're kind of it's not like we're available 24/7, but we're very responsive because we work when we need to work. So I think clients certainly appreciate the quick response time that we provide. And Doug's point about approachability, I take my work very seriously, but I'm also pretty relaxed and easy to talk to. And I think clients like that, particularly in a litigation context where it is quite stressful and daunting. So I think it's pretty valuable to be able to feel free to raise questions or ask questions when you're not sure what's going on with your lawyer.
Another way to answer that question, Terry, is when I've been in firms where we've been doing things a certain way, say we've had a practice management system, and we transition to a new system, there's always a bit of teething, but once you get into it, a lot of people are like, oh my God, I can't imagine I've done any differently, right? But you didn't think you had a problem. You didn't think the way you were doing it was necessary. But once you're doing it differently, you're like, oh, actually, this is great. This is actually way better. So maybe there's a bit of that with clients. I think you're right. I think we are creating the market. The smaller firms, those that are in your series, I think in many ways are creating the market. And it's starting with the smaller businesses and working its way up. But I think increasingly we'll see bigger and bigger players in the commercial world realising that this is. I also think the other thing that's happening is we have much more of a buyer's market in legal than we've had for a long time. And I think and clients can afford to dictate terms a lot more to their law firms, and that's forcing a lot of this stuff.
We love to wrap these sessions with some advice. So for the folks that are sitting listening to this today, and they want to kind of emulate all of the great stuff that you've been talking about, and they're sitting in their firm, you know, surrounded by the busyness of the day and trying to cut out space to do that. My question to you is this: where do they start to think differently? Where do they start that journey? And again, addressing it to all or any of you.
Could I say something? I think that the legal industry is laced with fear. There are, I think, law students, law graduates, and junior lawyers are so afraid of losing a job, of doing the wrong thing. I think that the whole culture is very fear-based. And so I think a lot of lawyers are just scared to make a change, go out on their own, try something different. They think that, you know, if there's no continuity in their CV or something, that it's a disaster. And I really thought that way too. But now that I've made the leap, and I think as long as you've got the skills and you're good, that someone will really want, will want you, you know, I think you've got to be a bit more brave as a lawyer, not be so risk averse. That's my advice.
Yeah, similar to Kat, I think identify the niche that you think is not being met, and why and how you can meet that niche market. And what Kat said is, be brave and be bold. I think so. When I left the old firm, I had an idea in my mind of what I could do without any secure work coming my way. And so a few people were saying I was having a midlife crisis or something. It's worked out all right at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I love that as the tagline.
Yeah,
Be brave, be bold, right?
Yeah, I think be prepared to make some mistakes and have some things that don't work. And I guess, you know, our job as lawyers is to try and imagine the worst, you know, and imagine all the things that could go wrong. And I think that's what creates a bit of the fear, is just how we're trained, the way we think. But I think in terms of picking what you do with your career, sometimes you have to think, well, what is the worst that could go wrong? How likely is that to happen? So that's how you then make some assessment to help your decisions. Because sometimes what we imagine is the worst is actually not likely to happen, or is not going to be as bad as we imagine. And so that mistake or that failing is not the end of the world. We learn from it, we pick ourselves up, and we go along. And I think that can really be a useful way of making some decisions. The other thing I'd say, Terry, too, to people wanting to start firms and go out on their own, is don't feel that you have to reinvent the wheel. I think there's so much useful information, so many great advisors and consultants, and I think, you know, within my space there's been a fantastic amount of collegiality, and through organisations such as yours, you know, I've just been through the incubator program, and that was just a fantastic opportunity to collaborate with sort of some like-minded firms and some amazing coaches, and that really helped in a lot of ways without us all having to reinvent the wheel each time. So that's big advice too.
Thanks, Peter. Really appreciate the shout out as well as today, and thank you also, Kat and Doug and Julian. Fantastic session. There's going to be so much that people will take away from this, and as they're listening to it, I'm sure want to reach out to you as well. And I know they can find all of you obviously at your website, but also on LinkedIn. So thank you for being open to that opportunity. Huge thanks to everyone also who attended, and don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook if you're interested in this series and the others that we have. But again, to all of you peer legal team, really appreciated your time today. Just a fabulous discussion, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Thanks, Krista.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.